How's it going, guys and geeks? Welcome to the Geekritique Show. My name is Dakota.
And I'm Jen.
And we are joined today by none other than Daniel Greene. Say hi, Daniel.
Hello.
He's been kind enough to offer to do a collab with us, and we couldn't turn down that offer. So we decided to do a video on his channel, which you can check out in the link. It's linked down below, and it'll be linked at the end of the video if you want to watch this first. We'll also be doing a video here on our channel about the Kingkiller Chronicle, which is a book, The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, that we've discussed here on the channel in depth. Maybe not recently, but in the past, we've done a little book club, if many of you remember, and ask us to go back to, and maybe someday we will. But for now, we're going to be discussing theories that involve The Name of the Wind and potentially the film and TV show series that is coming down the pipeline. So Daniel, before we begin, what is your relationship with The Name of the Wind and Rothfuss and all that?
So I did a review of the first book, famously on my first channel that blew up and got me a lot of backlash because I was too harsh. And then I did another review of the second book, and I wish I hadn't been so harsh in the first book, and I wish I had maybe been a little harsher on the second. I do think it's an incredible story Patrick is writing, but it's just not my taste, though I do greatly appreciate especially the lore and world he is building. Mm-hmm. So I'm the most qualified person to talk in depth about it and the theories.
No, that's okay.
Great, and I'm excited to talk about it. So actually, it's a series I can't talk about that much because every time I do, people just mention the fact that I've negatively reviewed it. So I'm excited to talk with some people who don't mind and are willing to hear my thoughts. So that's great.
I think it's good to have two separate opinions because I love this series. I think it might be my favorite ever.
You're on your third or fourth reread now?
Yeah, my third reread now, and I just love it. I mean, some people online, they're on their 12th reread, so I look like a,
You're a noob, Jen.
Yeah, I'm a rookie, but it'll be good because then you have me who's totally biased in one direction, and you who you don't love it as much, but yeah.
I respect it, especially his writing style, immensely. No one can deny that Patrick Rothfuss writes like an absolute poet. Mm-hmm. In terms of technical writing, the guy's on another level that few can match. The biggest concern I have, and you and I talked about this before recording, but I'm afraid he has the J.J. Abrams mystery box problem, where he loves to ask these questions, but he doesn't have the answers to them. And that's why the third book's taking 7 years, because he's trying to answer these questions he asked where he didn't know where it was going. I don't necessarily think that's the case for everything. I think the guy seems very competent as a writer, so I think he does know where a lot of it's going. But knowing the answers to all the questions and then actually weaving the answers cohesively into a narrative is very difficult. And I think that might be his biggest stumbling block currently. That's my theory. That's my first Kingkiller Chronicles theory.
There you have it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about his writing style, because not a lot of people realize Rothfuss, and I'm actually going to counter that. I don't think Rothfuss is a fantastic writer naturally.
Excuse me, sir.
I think he has the ability to produce. I think he has the ability to produce fantastic prose, but the reason he's able to do fantastic prose is because he literally rewrites his books 70 to 80 times. He most authors have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 drafts of a story before they send it out to the publisher. He rewrites ad nauseum for years. Mm-hmm. And I think that lends to him being able to remove whole sentences and not show you the entire story, because it's, I guess, through the narration of growth. And because this has been rewritten so many times, I think that has stacked into one another. And I think that's why his writing style is so unique. And that's what makes it beautiful. I don't think he's a naturally good writer, but I think he has the dexterity and the will to do more than he necessarily should. And I think that's what lends to a lot of these theories, because he doesn't fully develop all his ideas.
Which I
so
think...
there's...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, there's a bit of stamina there that you think other authors just don't have, where he's willing to craft a story again and again and polish and just go through, which kind of lends to the whole slipping little lore things into every little itty-bitty line to result in fans extrapolating ad nauseum till they're, pulling their hair out trying to figure out what's going on, because he's wonderful at just little poetic inslips here and there to make you wonder.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, too, a lot gets he says a lot in what he doesn't say, or he'll leave out certain things entirely that you can keep rereading it and notice something different every time. It almost, not that his prose is similar to Hemingway, but it's kind of like some aspects or the conversations remind me a bit of Hemingway, where not everything is like spelled out for you. And I think that's what makes it so rereadable. And like Dakota was saying, like, it's very easy to start when you put that type of writing in a fantasy setting. It leads to like huge theories where how many people are sitting there with like, you know, a short Hemingway like novel and trying to, you know, like get a magic system out of it. So when you put something so complex, like a concept so complex with such a unique writing style, I think that's where this goes, you know. A magic system or 8. Yes, exactly. Yes. And it's like, you know, 2 books in and we still don't really know.
Right.
That's what frustrates me so much, though, is I've never seen such a severe case of middle trilogy slog than the second one, because I just feel like nothing happened, and I'm very open to you guys proving me wrong with your theories here, because that was my biggest complaint, is the second book, it just felt like we were wandering, like, oh, cool, we're now with the sex fairy. Neat.
Yeah, I really don't like the DeLorean.
That was strange,
like,
but
I feel uncomfortable. Like, if I'm in my car listening to those, I'm like, I don't want to be here.
Yes. So I don't think
Let me increase the speed on this. Let's go through. Let's blitz.
Maybe that wasn't a good idea. Yeah, so we actually had the opportunity to meet Rothfuss at Comic-Con, I think 2017? Yeah, it was 2017.
Yeah, I think so.
He gave a discussion at our panel, and then afterwards he sat down with us for 15 minutes or so.
What a nice guy. Because I think, like, online his presence can be, he's very, like he seems like a little rough around the edges. Like, he can be, like, easily offended, or, like, on Twitter, like, he would kind of freak out about stuff. But, so I was a bit nervous to meet him, because I was like, I feel like if I say something to insult him, like, I'm definitely not asking about the third book, but if I say something, right, he might, like, this guy that I, like, love his work might actually be, like, kind of a jerk to me. But he ended up being, like, so nice, especially considering his father had died like
2 weeks prior.
Yeah, 2 weeks prior, and
wow.
Yeah, his dad had died, and he stayed after the panel, even though it wasn't his signing, to talk to people that were like asking him, because they couldn't make it the next day. Like, if they didn't have tickets for the next day, he was like, I'll sign your books now. And he stayed in, you know, quite a bit longer, where his manager was like telling him to like hurry up and like leave, and he wasn't listening to her. As far as the third book, I think, yeah, it's partially what you said, where he doesn't want to let his fans down. And I think part of what Dakota said too, where he is very over analytical and rewrites like crazy. I think, like, isn't it the intro in the first book? I'm like pointing to it as over here. The intro to the first book, he says like something about his dad making sure that he does something right the first time, and I think he really runs with that and wants it to be a perfect story. He doesn't care how long it takes. But I thought it was interesting too, in the panel he said like he was having some like serious mental health issues. And he's like, you know, if you have a construction worker and they break their leg, you're not going to just be like, just keep going into construction. I think he kind of realized he needed to, like, see a therapist or get some kind of help for, like, whatever was going on, like his depression and stuff, or whatever, like, mental, you know, thing he was going through. And that's a big part of why the third book is taking so long. And I feel like that's not a cop-out, because I don't know who would, it almost is like admitting, you know, like,
defeat.
Yeah, it's like you're admitting, like, I couldn't do my job. I wasn't mentally in a position to do my job. So what can I thought that was really brave, A, and B, like, an actual excuse for, not that you need to make an excuse for, like, why it's taking so long, but, you know, I think that's, you know.
Which is why I'll reiterate, if you're one of these people who goes on Twitter and harasses authors to get books out faster, you are a bad person.
Yeah. It's like, what's wrong with you people?
If you're a person who asks me ad nauseum every single day when the next MCU timeline is coming out, please stop.
It's really ridiculous. It's super stressful. I've even gotten DMs on my Instagram, and I'm like, I can't. Like, this is, I don't know what Dakota's doing.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a discussion for another time. What did you bring up to Rothfuss at that meeting?
So this is like, it's not like a huge theory at all,
no,
but it's just something that I thought was an interesting point, where you have like the Lackless poem from the beginning, and I think that poem is super crucial to the story for a ton of different reasons. And I love that it sounds so simple. It's just like, you know, like a little kid's like nursery rhyme or whatever. But there's the last line that says, Lackless likes her riddle raveling. And for some reason that clicked to me that it's not unraveling, it's raveling. And the word ravel in the series, in the first book, I think.
In the second book, too.
In the second book?
It's used pretty
it's used, the etymology, but I think in the first book, he gets asked during his questions, like, what is the etymology of the word rabble? Because he gets really offended when Hem says rabble. And it's basically, like, a word for the Rue. And it's, like, a derogatory term for the Rue. And I just thought that that's really interesting, that Lackless's mystery, whatever it is somehow affiliated with the Edema Rue. And I asked him about that, and he, like, went on this whole tangent, this 10-minute tangent about this poem by Robert Frost, and it was actually really interesting, and I thought it was really cool. But I was like, that sounded like he said that a million times before, and I looked it up, and there was a YouTube video of him saying it to somebody else. So I was like, okay, he premeditated that like, I think anytime anybody asks him about a theory, he just goes on about this poem with Robert Frost and how he doesn't want to spell everything out for you. But then I was like, at the end of it, I was like, so I'm going in the right direction though, right? And he was just like, yeah. Like, he didn't say that I was accurate, he just said I'm going in the right direction. Because I think I did ask too, like, is the Lackless poem super important? And like, yeah, I think it's pretty important. I don't know, I don't want to put words in his mouth that, like, weren't there, but he made it seem like I'm not an absolute psychopath. So that comforted me.
I do want to say that actually brings up something I do immensely respect about Rothfuss. I have never seen an author so continually hounded for answers who just so tactfully dodges. Yeah. He is so good at being like, maybe.
Yeah, he just doesn't.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, and he can dodge some wrenches. Yeah, and that just goes to show, like, that little tiny theory that Jen had about how this one little word in this one poem in this book had significance. That just kind of, like, opened my mind to saying, like, if this has significance, what else has significance? What else did the characters say to one another that could potentially mean something extremely big for future plot lines down the line, you know? So I guess we can go into the discussion of you've already mentioned he has 8 different types of magic systems. Yes. Now, this is something that I wasn't aware of, actually, because the way he writes, he weaves it into his storytelling so seamlessly that he doesn't actually give every one of them names, not necessarily in the main 2 books, but I know in his short story, The Lightning Thief, he does name 2 more. Mm-hmm. But I guess I have them pulled up right here. We can go into them pretty briefly. Jen, you want to do this?
Oh, do you want me to just read off the names?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so alchemy, sympathy, naming, sigiltry, glamoury, and grammary.
Right.
And then there's a 7th one that people aren't sure what it is. And it could be 2 things. That's what's kind of confusing.
Right. So Rothfuss has actually said that there are at least 8.
Oh, so he did say at least 8.
Yes.
Oh, so then that makes a lot more sense, because it says here 7. That's why I was like, that doesn't make sense. It's kind of like with the Chandrian, right? Like, how many are there?
Right.
7
well, we'll get into that in a little bit, but
Chandrian translates to 7, so
yes, it does. It does translate to 7, but
okay. First of all, though, in the series, anytime somebody says that, they're like, "Doesn't it?" Nobody's super like.
Nobody's pretty sure. Yeah.
In the series, anytime somebody says that, it's always like with some form of apprehension. Like, I don't feel like that's just something that, like, the Chandrian spread a lot of lies. So I don't know why they would spread that lie, though. It doesn't really. I don't know why.
Have a little hidden member tucked away in your pocket, little hidden guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now that we're on that topic, we might as well jump into it. But the Chandrian, there's a continuing discussion throughout at least the first book, and I think somewhere in the second book, where they discuss whether or not it is 7 or 8 individuals.
And that's what drives me nuts, because Kvoth, for some reason, is so sure that it's 7.
Because of what Abinthy told him in the first book, that no, it's definitely 7. This is what it means.
Yeah, and it's like, that was nice, your little Abinthy voice.
Oh, my little Abinthy voice? Yeah, sorry.
So, it's just interesting to me, because there's, like, that whole scene where he's, like, looking at the picture of the pot from that wedding that, like, the Chandrian, like, freaking wrecked. And he's so disappointed because there are 8 people on the pot. And I think this is just my theory, and I didn't pull up, like, the pages and all of that, but I don't think that Haliax is part of the Chandrian. I think there's 7 and Haliax. So that would make them together 8.
Kind of like how in Star Wars, we don't necessarily know who the Knights of Ren are at this point, but it is said Kylo Ren is the leader of the Knights of Ren.
Like you have Kylo and then you have the Knights. And that's what I think is happening.
I think that's...
Because it's so weird too, because I think if it was as simple as it's just 7, then, you know, why would they keep being like, how many is it?
Right.
Like constantly there's like, so how many Chandrian are there? Like, I don't know, I just think it's like, he keeps saying like that question. And I think
it's a Chekhov's gun insert, where you insert
Yes.
the idea that, okay, no, it's not 7, and it'd be incredibly disappointing if it turned out just to be 7. Which is, it's a good point to your theory. I mean, you wouldn't, as an author, you wouldn't ask that question if you weren't eventually going to change things up, go a different road.
Yeah.
So I can see where you're coming from there, and I don't wholeheartedly disagree. And, you know, in software development, a 7's 8 because you start counting at 0. So maybe they just used to start counting at 0.
That's
well, there's
fair.
that.
Yeah. Another thing that's cool about Rothfuss is that he has a clear understanding of at least chemistry and certain things, because you can tell in the writing of the series that he knows exactly what happens with certain concoctions. And I think there's even a scene in the the artificery where Kvothe just looks over and he sees 2 students mixing 2 ingredients, and he doesn't say what they're mixing, but in real life that would make LSD.
Yeah, and that's like one of those things where he doesn't actually say it, but only the people who knew what those ingredients would have made were like, wait, they're making LSD. It's something like that. So I love that.
Yeah, little stuff like that. Another cool thing with like in that vein where like he weaves in little things is the idea that waystones have a purpose, and that's pretty important to the Edema-Ru whole mythology. They find that they're safe places. Other people find that they're evil places. Other people find that they're portals to the Fae.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, they're at the corners of the world, right? That's the 4 corners, yeah.
There's a scene where Sim reads something in a book, and it's basically saying that, like, if there are 3 that are, like, kind of stacked on top of each other, during a full moon, people would not let their children go near it because they thought that it was a portal to the Fae realm. So I thought that was interesting.
It probably
and
is.
There's, like, a whole scene, like that whole scene with the what's it? Not a dragon, the Dracus.
Dracus. Yeah.
They're on top of one of those, and I thought that was interesting.
Which is interesting because they're looking for Denna's master, who she calls Master Ash.
Yeah.
Who many believe to be... it's a very popular theory that it's actually Cinder, one of the Chandrian.
Yeah. Which, every time someone says Master Ash, I just picture Ash Ketchum with all the Pokemon. I'm like, he's got him, he's a master. Okay.
He's like, turns his cap before he throws a ball.
I'm going to kill Kvothe's family. Boom. No.
Yeah.
But no, I have... That's one of my frustrations here with Kingkiller, though. Like, in a nutshell, is like the lore is so interesting. Patrick Rothfuss is so good at getting you to ask questions, want to know more. But there's a few things in his writing that just so painful for me to get through. So it's like the whole like sex fairy thing. So many things. It's just like, stop this so we can go back to what you're good at. And that's why, like, I've said this many times. Once Patrick Rothfuss is writing something new, once he goes to something else, I will be first person in line to pick up what he's doing. Okay. Because the way he sets all this stuff up is he's spinning a web that's on a level that I've rarely seen in literature. I mean, the guy knows, and that's from, I think, what you were saying, that obsessive need to go through again and again. It's the sign of, real genius to want to craft something that you consider a masterpiece. No one paints a Mona Lisa in a day or on their first draft. There's a lot of Mona Lisas where like the eyes are slightly crossed. That's a thing.
And that it kind of reminds me of, not that I've read the Malazan series, but everyone says that it's a masterpiece with like so many different types of point of view characters, that it's like probably the biggest fantasy world ever created, at least in terms of like the web that he weaves. So I don't know how that compares to Name of the Wind and Rothfuss, but if you have read Malazan, I'm actually very interested in reading it. I would like to hear your thoughts down below.
I can tell you right now, it is single-handedly, without question, the largest world I've come across.
Really?
Not by word count. Wheel of Time's longer if you include the prequel.
Okay.
But by just, I mean, it's the only series I've ever seen where, like, you start a book with this group of people, and then the next book, it's like, now forget all that. We're going to another continent or country. We're going to talk with this group of people over here, and it'll be eventually be connected. And give it, like, it's crazy, the scale of just being like, we set all this stuff over here. Now let's go set all this stuff up over here. Really? And it just feels completely removed. At first, it was jarring to a point where it's like, I don't like this. But once you get this guy's crafting maybe the most true to feeling like a world fantasy realm ever, you just have to respect it. I mean, Steven Erikson has to just be crazy in a good way to do this. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to Name of the Wind, which is why you guys are here. Hopefully, I mean, our company is nice and all, but you're here for some content. We talked about briefly the 8 different magic systems. 6 of them are named. There's a 7th that's been teased, and an 8th that we do not know of yet. So we want to talk about a potential 7th that we only are teased of.
Potential 8th.
Potential 8th, yes. Potential 8th.
So you think that this is the 8th one, and that the 7th one is something different?
Here's the thing. We know that 6 are named. 6 are named magics. A 7th has been teased. And then there's an 8th that we haven't been subjected to yet. But we think that this 7th one. Sorry. No, it's okay. It's important to like make that distinction. There has been a 7th tease in the book that we just don't have a name for, right, or have even realized what it is. So why don't you get into that?
I think Denna is like, there's something up with her, obviously, and I think for me, where this all started is a lot of times she has things that like just don't line up with time. Like she'll have a fruit that's completely out of season. And like it's just something simple like that. Like literally several times, well, no, 2 that I've counted. When Kvothe meets up with Denna, she is eating a fruit and he says, "Where did she get a pear? Pears aren't in season." And it's just this weird little thing. And he notices it. Or even like another time, she should have calluses on her fingers. Or she shouldn't have calluses?
No, she should. She should
have calluses. Yeah. And she doesn't have them. Like she says that she's been practicing the lyre? No, the half harp. Is the lyre just a half harp? Those are the same instrument, I think.
I don't know. Medieval instruments.
Where she should have them. And I think that there's something definitely up with her. She believes in magic because she asks them about it. She asks about a written magic. But I think that there's just something, like, she clearly has some kind of magical element to her, the way she just comes and goes, constantly disappearing and reappearing, and there's something up. There's something up. It's not like she's just some normal girl, and I think everybody knows that, but all of the little things that are affiliated with magic and her are so subtle that you can hardly, figure it out.
With Denna, she does bring up that there's that one scene in the Aeolian where she's with Sim and them, and she asks about a written magic that we haven't heard from, or that we have never heard about, and everyone looks at her like crazy, like, no, that doesn't exist, that's not true. But she seems pretty disappointed about it at that point. Later, there's the letter that she sends Kvothe.
Yeah, and that's somebody's specific theory, which that I would want to say, and I have it saved on my phone, because that guy's... So, she writes this letter, right? I spent so much time trying to decode this letter, because I was like, clearly there's something up here, because she, like, writes, like, she's spelling stuff wrong, she's writing some things in capitalized, some things not, and then this guy, or girl, don't know, on Reddit came up with this theory, and it's just freaking phenomenal. And it literally changed the way that I looked at the series. Let me just find it really quick.
So
it's this guy, Khaleesi75.
Okay, so
get it, Khaleesi.
Khaleesi75. We're going to sort you to cite you in our sources here, but we'll leave a link in the description.
And he was like,
below.
Look at how much, like, I don't know if you can see. It's like he or she. I keep saying it's Khaleesi, so that's a female. Girl, yeah, she wrote a ton of stuff. So that's not my theory at all. And then she also cites like other people who had similar theories online. But basically, she writes this, like, wordy letter that's all over the place and just saying random stuff that she ends up doing, and Kvothe ends up doing all of those things later. And that's why, because you were saying, like, nothing happens in book 7. And book 7. In book 2. And a lot of...
I was about to say, what did I miss?
Book 7. And you were saying that, like, nothing happens in that, and I think that that's a part of why I think that Denna based on Khaleesi 75's theory, Denna basically changed Kvothe's story because she wrote him this letter, and when he read it, he started doing all of those things. Because I've met other people too that feel like book 2 is just so random.
Yeah.
But I think that she's experimenting with written magic because she asks about it. I think she sees them in the Alien and says, like, is there a type of magic where you write things down and it comes true? And then literally later on that happens. There's
also the potential that Ambrose may have also used this type of written magic.
Which is a part of the theory.
That he... that's how he basically gets girls. He writes them really bad poetry that somehow, just blinds them into, that being extremely submissive, which is super creepy and weird. But...
Yep.
Super date rapey.
Yes. And Kvothe actually does get his hands on it, and it's right after he gets his hands on it that he goes and takes a candle through the archives,
which is just blindingly dumb. Like, there's just no way like he would have done that. Like, I don't care how much Nalru you were on. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So I think if you guys have any more theories on Kingkiller, please lead it up.
And check out like the theories on Reddit. They're really cool. Yeah. And a lot of people put a lot of work into them.
Do you have any theories, Daniel?
My theory is that what I said at the beginning. I'll stick with that one for now. Actually, you know what? Let's bring up the 4-plate door. That's what it's called, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, my theory is that almost all the answers to a lot of the questions people are asking are behind there. It's gonna be one of those things where, like, some people speculate there's a whole city down there. I think probably. Some people expect the next like all the answers to the magic are down there. Probably. I mean, the translation is truth, and I think Patrick Rothfuss put that translation on there. And I'm pulling quite a bit here from Captured in Words. He has wonderful videos on Kingkiller Chronicles, and he went through all the theories of the 4-plate door. And I just went like, I don't see why it can't be everything you just said. Like, I think Patrick Rothfuss put a pretty definitive statement of truth on there, and I think that's meant to be taken as, for the reader, all these questions you're asking, the truth will be found in there. Whether it's literally just forgotten knowledge, the truth of the histories, because there's so much of this history that's obviously been tampered with and not accurate. 7 to 8, we don't know. Who knows? Like, I think we'll finally get the answers behind that, and I think that's going to be the key. I think if there is a full city down there, a lot of the next book's going to be down there. That's my the tomb of all the bad people. Yeah, probably.
Why not?
And although I will say, if that is the case and there is a full city down there, I'm amazed no construction worker has accidentally found it. Because that is a real thing that happens in the world.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Yeah. That's how they found Troy, actually.
Yeah, and the catacombs of France were forgotten. Don't know how you forgot you had millions of dead people beneath your city, but then a construction worker knocked open a wall and went, "Oh my god,
this is horrifying!
This is horrifying, creepy, and somehow kind of pretty." Yeah, how they've managed to stack all these bones so neatly. Yeah, that's
maybe
weird.
Ari's found it.
Maybe. So you wanted to get into technical sides of the writing a little bit, you said?
This is just when it comes to a lot of my complaints for Patrick Rothfuss, he asks these questions and goes to such extreme lengths, and I'm just afraid if he doesn't have the answers and he's gone to all these lengths answering them the way he set them up, I cannot see answering them in a one-book narrative in a way that'll satisfy an audience. To me, that is one of the biggest hurdles I've seen a fantasy author put in front of themselves ever. And if I had to have a theory of why, I think he didn't lie when he said I have the 3rd book done. I think he has every bit of the ideas there, all the answers there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But what might be slowing him down is just finding the actual way to write that is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as someone who is obsessive with perfection as it seems, that might be what's causing this delay. It's just he wants it to be the most cathartic ending possible, and when you've asked 500 questions and you're gonna have 500 pages, good luck.
Yeah.
That's my theory right there.
Yeah, without it feeling like slapdash information just thrown your way.
Yeah. Without just having a worldwide wizard come in and be like, here's the answers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the tougher thing too, I think.
Anyone who's read the first 2 books will inevitably ask yourselves, how on earth is this going to be wrapped up in one book? The rest of the storylines that are just left open, because there's still so much that Kvothe has said that he needs to do in the 3rd day of his storytelling, his narration. So yeah, I'm a little worried about that as well. But again, the fact that he is so neurotic about writing and rewriting as much as he does, I think either way it's going to be an enjoyable read. I think it'll be a beautiful read. Whether it'll be a good read remains to be seen, and whether it'll be satisfying also remains to be seen. Let's just talk a little bit about the Kingkiller TV show and or movie that is potentially coming. Daniel, I know we talked a little bit about this on your channel, but what are your thoughts?
When it comes, I have done a ridiculous amount of research into the streaming wars and to fantasy adaptations and all this stuff. I have a series on my channel called The Streaming Wars, where I'm just getting into, what is happening right now? Why are we seeing 90 plus fantasy sci-fi EPs coming down the road? And the answer is pretty obvious. Sorry, I just bumped my microphone. Why are we seeing so many fantasy sci-fi adaptations coming down the road? The answer is pretty obvious. Game of Thrones made all the money in the goddamn world, and all these studios want a cut of that cake. And they're aware that reaching the same level of success of Game of Thrones is going to be extraordinarily hard. So they're looking to fan bases that are very passionate. We just talked about the fact that there are entire subreddits of people just diving into every line of Patrick. This is a passionate fan base. Trust me, I put up a negative review of one of the books. I know how passionate the fan base is. And for me, this blitz of games, music, movies, TV shows, of course it has a bit of like a overly corporate vibe. It doesn't feel like a passion project. It feels like a market strategy, which it is, but what people have to realize is 90% of the time when something feels like a passion project, that's the point of the marketing strategy you're falling for. So I don't necessarily think it's inherently a bad thing. Optimal case, they pick a great showrunner for the show, give him all the power, and walk away. They pick a wonderful director, producer, writer for the movie, give him all control, make sure he understands what it is, and they walk away. Same thing for the video game. And for the music, they get Lin-Manuel Miranda, who they already have signed on to just run that, and will be great. Yeah. The problem is Patrick. I love him as a creative mind, and I really hope he has the answers for when the people writing these scripts call him. And he can give them great, satisfying, concise answers for them to write their stories with, especially with a prequel, because he can just kind of go creative nuts there. He can, really have a field day building his world. But I'm really afraid for, I think it's the movie that's currently the Kingkiller Chronicles, the actual current events. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid for that director, when he asks Patrick, okay, how are you going to answer these questions? Patrick's going to go, I'm not sure how I'm going to answer in a 500-page book, let alone a 120-page script.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be tricky. That's my biggest fear. But I also think in terms of a lot of the franchises bought, it has one of the highest likelihoods of finding success, just due to the fan base, due to the passion, due to the writing style and the creative world built. It already has a built-in market. They're willing to take a risk. They're going to make the investment. The investment's clearly been made. They have huge names attached. So I think it's a very high likelihood to be satisfying to this fan base.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think too, a lot of the questions, like you said, with the 4-plate doors, are going to have like one resolution will answer multiple questions.
I hope so. That's probably the smart way to answer this.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to end up happening. And I think too, a lot of the questions are really subtle. I think you could read the first 2 books and not know, oh yeah, there's 8 magic systems or anything like that, and then maybe in the shows they might not even touch on that, or in the films they might not touch on these.
I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, because it's not like, the real fans are like super, trying to figure everything out. But a lot of people just read them because they're really beautifully written. And I think too, some questions might just go unanswered, and like a lot of general readers won't notice.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys definitely have a better pulse of the fan base than me. But I feel like the Kingkiller fan base is one that would react negatively to watering down the source material.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm saying, the ones that are, like, super into it would be, like, really pissed. Okay. But I've met so many people that just read them and were like, yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. Okay.
Which is partly why it's kind of scary that they're trying to pack these 3 massive books with so much going on into potentially a trilogy of movies. I keep bouncing around with the idea that they'll have to cut out a lot, or maybe they'll just have to cut out Kvothe's narration, to pack as much into it as possible. But if you cut out Kvothe's narration, you get rid of the poetry of the series, and if you cut out,
you kill the soul of the series.
You kill the soul, and if you take out big portions of the actual text, you're gonna kill the flow. So I don't know. It seems like a lose-lose to me. But I'm hoping that whoever they find will find the right bits to adapt. whether it be in a TV show, in a film, or a video game, and we'll go from there.
The video game confuses me the most.
We're gonna go with that.
It's not an action-filled, video games usually rely on action. There's some click adventure stuff that's popular, but I'd be so funny if it was like a first-person shooter. Like, I gotta get to chemistry. Like,
well, I guess Name of the Wind is one of the only like first-person books out there in the genre. So.
What kind of game is it supposed to be?
Nobody knows.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think they're still in the deciding parts of that.
So they're like, what do we do?
Maybe they'll just go with like a little mobile app to go along with the storytelling.
No, I hope not.
I don't.
If I was gonna guess, I would assume it's gonna be like one of the Walking Dead game, where it's like a decision-making, story-based thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which I really hate
Undertale,
to be honest.
Oh, well, Telltale, they've gone under, so it's not going to be them. But
I found those so stressful and not enjoyable. Like, I go to entertainment to not make choices. I don't want to make the character choices for them. I was really bad at it. I remember, like, we did the Game of Thrones one, and it was just awful. Like, I was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to die. And that's it. Well,
all right. Well, we've been at this for almost 35 minutes now, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on our show. We're so happy to have had you and to discuss this stuff. Kingkiller is a huge fan base. It may be in trouble. We don't know, but we hope that the next book is good, and we hope that the TV and film adaptations will be awesome. Because
same.
Like you were saying before we filmed, the amount of fantasy that's coming out now, we hope that the high tide raises all ships. So if one show does well, we hope that it'll translate to another show and another show, instead of it just being so oversaturated, like the market anyway, that it just all crumbles.
So what happened to the Westerns after they got big? There just was like 40 Western shows, and then everyone's like, well, I can't, no. And then all of them failed.
To a lesser extent, if you'll permit me the time, like superhero films, yes, Marvel's doing fantastic. But
they take everything up.
Yes, they have sucked up all the air out of the room. Dark Phoenix, which was once part of a huge franchise, the X-Men franchise, lost like over 100 million because nobody went to see it. We hope that's not the case with what's going to be coming down the pipeline for the fantasy series. And we talk a lot about fantasy that's coming up in both TV and film in Daniel's video, which you can check out right over here. So if you haven't liked this video already, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't. But also, please check out Daniel Greene. He's doing awesome stuff over on his channel. And Daniel, thanks for coming.
Anytime.
To say thank you to Graf Fuller for shouting us out on Daniel's Twitter, because we wouldn't be here without him.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Graf.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Peace.